we don't have enough women in the sector. So therefore, it's an agenda issue that's been there. But what we want to do was bring together both the gender issue, but also the issue about race and the issue about disability, bring those together. And basically to put our sector out there as being something which has good practice in this area. If all we're getting is that kids or young people who want to come into our industry are being put off because of the attitudes that we've had within the sector, then that becomes a real problem going forward.
Thanks for joining me in the AM News Show podcast studio. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
We've had another discussion with it as a group panel, so it's great to catch up with you. And particularly today, I wanted to speak to you about your work with the IMI on diversity. I mean, there's a huge research piece into that. We already heard a little bit about that at AM Live when you joined Julia Muir on stage. I wonder where's the investigation taking you to date, and what are your key findings at this point?
Well, if I start how the whole process began, I wrote an article in AM which was basically saying there is both a moral but also an economic reason why we need diversity and inclusion in our industry, and the fact that we need to improve it. And I'd just become, surprisingly, president of the IMI, and one of the readers, Nathan Sawbridge from Toyota Lexus in Nottingham, wrote to me and said, well, Jim, look, it's all very well you writing about it. Why don't you do something about it? And so I went to Steve Nash and we discussed from the IMI, and we discussed it. And it'd been on his agenda for a long period of time. And so we said, right, how do we actually tackle this? So what we've done is we set up an industry expert panel made up of basically all the big players in the industry, and then split into 3 working groups. One which is to do with gender and gender identity, one to do with race and ethnicity, and one to do with disability, both visible and non-visible. Because what we wanted to do was try and say, look, how can we make our sector, our industry, more inclusive? How can we be more attractive to as many people as possible? We know that we've got a skills shortage, we've got a staff shortage at the moment. So therefore, if we're sort of putting up barriers, or we have perceived barriers to people from the widest range of our communities that stops them coming in, then we have a problem. And that's to do with recruitment, it's to do with development, it's to do with a whole range of issues.
And is the ultimate goal to provide, I guess, a series of recommendations for employers, is it?
Yeah, it's to do with both recommendations, but also to do with resource. The aim is that we will end up with some resource, we will end up with some benchmarks, some qualifications, some sort of ways in which companies can sort of look at how they can improve. So we're looking at modules, we're looking at a whole range of certification processes, because a lot of the companies, Sitner and others, have appointed people to look at this particular area in their business. So therefore they will be producing sort of modules, training, education. And it really is, it's been a kind of salutary journey, because I think most of us who have been engaged with it didn't know what we didn't know. And we suddenly have seen so many poignant examples of where people have felt disenfranchised from the industry, have struggled because of either their gender, their race, or the disability issue.
Why is this happening now? I mean, there will be. Don't take this the wrong way, Jim, but there will be people out there saying, Jim, you're an academic in the sector and you've clearly been around for quite a number of years. What's prompting this action now to gain more diversity?
Well, I think there's been a general awareness raising of the whole issue within society. And so therefore we can't be seen to be a carbuncle stuck on the side which doesn't even look at it, But also it's been an issue which has been addressed by Julia Muir and the 30% Club for a number of years, saying we don't have enough women in the sector. So therefore it's an agenda issue that's been there. But what we want to do was bring together both the gender issue, but also the issue about race and the issue about disability, bring those together. And basically to put our sector out there as being something which has good practice in this area. If all we're getting is that kids or young people who want to come into our industry are being put off because of the attitudes that we have within the sector, then that becomes a real problem going forward. You know, I've written and talked to you about it a bit before, about homophily, the whole idea that somehow we're attracted to people like ourselves. And so therefore we tend to live in areas with people like ourselves, and we tend to recruit in our own image. Unless we can break that cycle of, birds of a feather flocking together, if we can't break that cycle, we have a major problem, because all we're doing is recruiting from one very narrow part of our society. And that basically isn't good enough for an industry which is modernising, powertrain is changing, digitalisation, the whole range of things, which we can't just say, this is the model we're going to work with, this group of people we're going to work with. We have to change that.
What would you say are the key levers for change? When we were listening to Julia Muir speak at AM Live, she was citing McKinsey research, which suggested that businesses could become more profitable if they have a diverse workforce. Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, all of the research, whether it be from the major agencies, the academic research, is sort of saying the more diverse a group of people you have making decisions, the better those decisions, because they see the world from different perspectives. Otherwise, you just get groupthink. So therefore you have to have that diversity that brings in different slants, different angles. And it makes the decision-making more creative. It means that you've got different sorts of perspectives. I can't place myself, inside the experience of somebody who's been brought up black in the UK. I can't as a woman. And I can't as somebody with a disability. But once you start to see their focus, the lens with which they're looking at the industry, you start to say, well, it's so obvious that we've got this wrong. We have a situation, it's simple stuff like on some of the large companies, they have a sheet which you fill out to apply for a job. And it's always got, you need a clean driving licence. Well, why? Does every role within our sector require a clean driving licence? And so therefore what we've got is somebody with partially sighted who works in our sector but has been turned down time and time and time again because of that one tick box, because it just gets filtered out straight away. That's a minute sort of example, but it's something which is so prevalent. Also, when you take the gender out of an application, you take the surname out of an application, you find that the balance of people being called for interviews, both on the gender and the race side, is totally different. We seem to, people look at it and go, oh, right, yeah, dismiss because of either gender or race, whatever. And it's not necessarily that somebody's going sitting down and being, I'm racist. What they're doing is basically they've got this issue that unless you're anti-racist, I think you end up being racist. It's that sort of mindset. So you have to be very careful how you think about it and also how you talk about it.
How hard line do you think car retail groups' policies have to be to really make this change happen? I mean, it's all right having the conversations at the top end, but on the showroom floor, where staff have been around the business for a number of years and there are entrenched habits, and often a largely male environment. How hard do retail groups have to come down to introduce policies that will allow diversity to flourish?
I don't think it's just policy. I think it's to do with education and training. Okay. Because to actually get to a level of cultural competence, which is really what we're trying to do, you have to be shown the insights. It has to be seen in a different perspective. It's not just simply a policy. It's not say, you can have the policies for, things like the recruitment process, but when it actually comes to working, it has to be something which is embedded within the mindset of people. I had a great example from Marshall Motor Group. There was a Islamic lad who worked for Marshall, and he went to pray, and he found somewhere to pray in a cupboard. And one of the other sales guys actually spotted this and thought, right, okay, what I'm going to do is clean out this covered area, put a carpet down. And the guy was he was crying as a result of it, just so impressed by the fact that somebody had bothered to actually do that. Now, it's that sort of thing of understanding the nuances of how people see the world, what they want. He cannot stop being a Muslim, but basically he as part of his faith, he needs to pray. Therefore, do we provide that facility? Is it something that should be more common? It's stuff like that, which is we kind of start to think about just rethinking how we configure things, how we view things. And the same thing on the gender side, that attitudes to women and how they're spoken to. And stuff which has historically been regarded as banter is not banter if it actually causes harm and damage to somebody because of the way in which somebody's being spoken to. So there's a whole raft of stuff that is coming out from this kind of work. And, you said, I'm an academic. Let's not knock the academics. They've had a bit of a contribution to try and solve the problem with COVID. So let's not go too hard down on them.
Never knock an academic,
yeah,
Jim.
Right.
It wasn't meant that way.
No. But it is that interesting perspective on saying, right, if we're trying to improve our sector, if we're trying to get there, it is an educational process which is involved in us understanding more what other people are like and how they see the world. If we can do that, we can make both the car industry but also society better in accepting other people. And we end up with less conflict, we end up with abuse, and that people are respected for who they are and the contribution they can make as an employee within the business.
Is it something that we can move quickly on? That we're seeing an awful lot about representation. People want to see diversity in sport, on television, so that the next generation see those people and want to emulate the actions and the successes of those that have come before them. I said to you, it's hard to get female faces simply in AM, at this stage. So how quickly can we make these changes happen?
I think it has to be a proactive. It's not going to happen naturally because of there's a kind of inertia which is built in within the industry. We need to have role models of women who are successful, and we're starting to have them. From the top of people in Stellantis, sort of Linda Jackson, Alison Jones. It's a whole range of people who are there, but they don't often get the share of voice that they should do. Men tend to be very much more in your face regarding their own achievements and what they've done and that type of thing, whereas women, and it's that thing about women applying for jobs. So somebody will look at it, and a woman will think they won't apply for it because they only meet 60% of the requirements. The man will apply for it, despite the fact they only present 30% of the requirements. There's a sort of confidence issue which comes through, and we need to recognise that and basically give a share of voice to these people. I learned a great lesson from my daughter. I chair the Women's Professional Basketball League in the UK, and I most of the players, it's a very much a black urban environment. It's not white middle class netball. It's a different kind of culture and group of people who play. And I was saying, part of my role as chair of that particular league is to give a voice to these black athletes. And she said, Dad, don't be so patronising. They have a voice. Your job is to amplify it. And so therefore, my role, and as part of the IMI with this task force, is to amplify the voice of the people who are currently in the industry, so to understand what they are feeling and to therefore be able to communicate them as role models for people outside our industry who might consider joining. So if we can amplify that voice through AM, through the stuff that the material that the IMI puts out, through this task force, then we're succeeding in at least giving our industry and our sector the opportunity of recruiting these type of a wider range of people from our communities.
Absolutely, Jim. I'm happy to leave it there, but thanks ever so much for coming in and speaking so passionately about diversity. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
In your research and the success. Hopefully, we can make those steps to make it a more diverse sector.
It'll be great if we can. Thanks very
ever
much.
so much.
Thank you.